Thank you, Mrs. Harland. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty One territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Robert Hutchings. I will be chairing the hearing today. I'm joined on the board by Mr. Robert Kraus and Ms. Carrie Linkletter, and our secretary today is Mrs. Crystal Harland. Our assessor today, representing the Assessment and Taxation Department, City of Winnipeg, is Omachinsky. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along in the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing, issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant and the panel will have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions based on the evidence presented today. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. Today we will hear items 2 through 7 on our docket. Mrs. Harlan, please affirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Assessor, would you please state your full name?
Mackenzie Omachinsky.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Stephen Charlebois Page.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. Good afternoon to the assessor and the applicant. First item on the docket, is item number 2. File number 24-2390, roll number 12092510-100. Its address is 70 Smith Street, and we're dealing with a 2025 realty assessment appeal. Mr. Omachinsky, when you are ready, please, 70 Smith Street.
Okay, thank you. This is file number 24-2390. The roll number is 12092510-100. The address is 70 Smith Street, roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $880,000, the classification 20 and liability T. There is one building with 3 stories. The actual and effective year built is 1955. There's 15 suites and 5 outdoor parking spots. We will go to page 3 for the summation of the number of units. So we have 15 one-bedroom units for a total of 15 units. The average monthly rent per unit is $639.05. The gross potential rent is $115,029. The vacancy rate is 4.3%. The effective gross income is $110,083. The expense rate is 60.44%. The net operating income is $43,549. The capitalization rate sits at 4.95%. And the estimated market value rounded would be $880,000. And the market value per suite would be sitting at $58,666.67. We'll go to page 4. This is the rent comparables. So the range for the effective year built for these comparables range from 1908 to 1959. The total number of units range from 14 to 21. The number of bachelor is 0 to 8. And number of one-bedroom units would be 7 to 18. And number of two-bedroom units would be 0 to 6. The average monthly rent per unit ranges from $695 to $921. The next page is capitalization rates information provided by the city on page 5. And then on page 6, we have our capitalization rate evidence. The following is the sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose of showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They're not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. Then we'll go to page 7, which is the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Page 8, we have a aerial photo of where the subject property stands, and then a street photo. And then on page 9 to 13 is the rent roll, and then the income and expense report. And that would be my presentation. I'm open for questions.
Thank you to the assessor. Mr. Charlevoix, any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, could I just confirm that the value presented today was model generated?
Yes, this is a model generated value.
So I know you included the income and expense statements there in a rent roll, I think redacted rent roll. Are you aware that the subject property has substantial vacancy?
I am aware, yes.
You think the 4.3% vacancy applied by the city is substantial given the property's, I think, about 2/3 vacant on the 22 statement?
Yep, I would think that that would be substantial.
Oh, so sorry. Do you think that, okay, so we can agree it's substantial, but do you think the 4.3% that's modeled is appropriate given that vacancy?
I don't know, it wouldn't be appropriate, but I do think when it comes down to the market value per suite being at 58,000 or 59,000 rounded, I think that's still right appropriate market value for the property.
But you would agree that a 4.3% vacancy rate in terms of the income approach to value would be low?
Yeah, the model would not be accurate.
Yeah. Okay. So I did have some questions, and I know this will overlap on this call, so hopefully I can go through this here on the first property and we can be expedient as we go forward. I'll just speak to the cap sales that you've provided in supplement on page 6. I just want to confirm some of these. With these properties or the cap rate shown here, to your knowledge, are these income over sale price, or have these been adjusted? Is there modifications made to these before the cap rate is derived, meaning adjustments, anything changed to income, sale price, any considerations? Do you know that?
I wouldn't know that information. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. The page before that, on page 5, we have a chart with the city range there for multifamily, and then we also have the broker data. I just note for these, the range for these low-rise assets from the brokerage firms is between 5 and 6. Is that a fair statement between the 3 firms?
Between 5 and 6. Yeah, that's a fair statement.
Okay. So this property here, let me just grab my year built, 1955. Do you think that the model is doing the cap rate justice at a 4.95? Like, do you think this belongs as either an outlier at the bottom end of the range in terms of cap rate, or in the high end of the range in terms of a quality asset?
Just due to like the number of units and the location, I think that the model is doing a reasonable job at where it's putting the cap rate at.
So you would put this in the higher end of multifamily assets in the city of Winnipeg?
For due to the size, yeah, size and location, just it being really close to the forks, kind of close to any amenities needed. I do think the cap rate, for the model cap rate is what I would be going with.
But yeah, okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Mr. Charlebois, do you have any rebuttal evidence to present at this time?
I do, and sort of in line with what I just said, I would present the rebuttal evidence. It's in relation to the cap rate dispute, and just make some small points on that if now is an appropriate time, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. I haven't put the rebuttal evidence in the folder yet. Would you like me to do that now?
Yes, please.
Okay, just a moment, please.
Thank you. And Mr. Charlebois, would this be relevant to the following properties on the docket? Would that
Yes, and I'll do my best, Mr. Chair, if you feel this is appropriate, to speak to it here and then ask that it be carried forward, because many of the properties are very similar and the issues would be overlapping.
Okay, we will confirm upon processing each particular docket that we'll have that information entered as
Sure.
evidence as we go along. But we'll do the fine points of it now when we all receive the rebuttal evidence. So you're going to take a couple of minutes for all of us to refresh.
Perfect. I'll sit tight.
I'll confirm everybody has it before we proceed. Thanks, Mrs. Harlan.
You're welcome. Yeah, please just bear with me.
Of course.
Okay, everybody, if you refresh your OneDrive, and Mr. Kraus, I'll copy and paste this into your folder.
This isn't the Altus apartment cap rate study yet.
Yes, but I don't think I put it in.
It's not that file. It's titled Altus Rebuttal to the City Cap Rate.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's called applicant rebuttal.pdf. Just came in.
Oh, sorry. It's named under a different file. My apologies.
Okay, I think everybody has it now.
Okay.
Was the assessor, Mr. Amachinsky?
I'm sorry, I'm looking for it now. Would it have been emailed with the applicant's evidence?
No, Mr. Assessor, I'm just going to send it to you right now.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Kraus, you have it now?
I do, thank you.
Okay, I just sent it to the assessor. Please let me know when you have it, Mr. Assessor.
All right, I have received it. I'm just opening it up here to make sure. Yeah, I got it. It's open.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Charlebois, when you're ready, please, the rebuttal.
All right, perfect. I will not spend too much time, as I've indicated. On here, you'll see The study that's been supplied by the city with the range of cap rates on page 2. Page 3, sort of the macroeconomic outlook at cap rates. Obviously, the Bank of Canada interest rate at 4.5 at the time of the valuation date. This is a component of calculating a capitalization rate. Obviously, the income approach is it's based on a formula that's deriving income capitalization opportunity. So if you were to go to the government and get a GIC at 4.5%, investors have to look at the trade-off, sort of the economic principle of substitution, and entering a real estate transaction for a capitalization rate at a similar rate to a government-insured bond. To me, that's the starting point for capitalization rates there and north as buying a depreciating asset that requires so much work in terms of all of the relationships that go on with people living there. So I'll go to the next page. We have page 4. We've outlined 2 sales there. And I'm hoping that what I've just spoken on will sort of dovetail into this is we've got cap rates of 3.46 on 727 Sargent and 4.21 on 241 Yonge. I think we can say that those are quite low and they're outside the typical range for a market like the city of Winnipeg. I think when someone buys an asset and that's the interest or the capitalization rate that's showing, they're buying a different income opportunity, whether they believe the current income is too low or redevelopment or what have you. There's something that's not being captured on a pure income over sale price and driving that cap rate. So for me, those are outliers and something's missing from that. And then I'll just hit one last note, which is on page 22, the sale of 677 Maryland. And I just noted that the city's using the older of the 2 sales. There's a sale in December 15th of 2020, which they're using. There's a more recent sale in March 1st, 2023. And it's at the lower sale price of 2.176. And calculating that cap rate, it'd be north of 7 there at 7.11. So that concludes what I wanted to touch on there. There's obviously more information, but sort of from that macroeconomic standpoint and within some of those outlying rates there, I just wanted to touch on those. So thank you.
Thank you to the applicant. Mr. Omachinsky, any questions of the rebuttal?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
I have no questions regarding the rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Charlebois, I would ask that in the following properties that are going to be heard today, that you ask that this be entered into evidence.
Okay.
For the record, please, as we deal with each separate appeal. Okay, and I have no questions either. And Mr. Kraus, any questions of the evidence presented by the assessor?
I have none. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Omachinsky, this is a 1955 building, and you have it as an effective age. Do you know when this building was last inspected?
Actually, I do not know that information for the
Okay.
last time it was inspected.
Okay, so you cannot speak to the quality of the building itself then?
No, I wasn't able to find anything for interior photos, just that exterior photo
All right,
at the bottom of my presentation there.
okay. And the model has chosen this cap rate of 4.95 on a 1955 building, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And there are 5 outdoor parking spaces, correct?
Yes, there is.
Okay, and that's for 15 suites.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Would you not think that that would be a deficit if a purchaser was looking at this building, an investor?
Yes, yeah, I do think that could be a deficit. We are downtown, so there may be other options available for parking. But yeah, I can't speak to that. For the 5 parking spots to 15 suites, I do think that would be a deficit.
All right. I thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Linkletter. And I have no questions of the assessor. Mr. Charlebois, allow us to find your brief, please.
Absolutely.
Okay. When you're ready with Mr. Charlebois, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the subject property is a 3.5-story multifamily building built in 1955. Subject property has a site area of 6,903 square feet, contains 15 one-bedroom units. Page 6 of my brief, there's a street view image of the subject property exterior. Current assessment is $880,000 in the residential class. I've set aside the sales comparison and cost approaches to value. I'll begin with my multifamily or my income value on page 12 of my report. The property, as discussed during the questioning period, has substantial vacancy. I've used the modeled income as the actual income is far below, obviously, what it optimally would perform at. So I've applied 115,029 as my PGI. I applied a 6% market vacancy. I know the subject property has grown in vacancy since 2020, and obviously it's inappropriate to put the actual vacancy on, given the market for multifamily assets. So I used a reasonable and what I feel is a stabilized figure at 6% for vacancy allowance. I'm disputing the assessor's expense allowance of not the overall amount, but the percentage. I'm using 66,387, which represents 61.4% of our PGI. The assessment authority is using 72,513, but it's at 60% of the EGI. It has to do with the difference in vacancy. For me, and principally different on this asset, I'm using a 5.75 capitalization rate. It's derived from the attached study that I sent, which was the Altus capitalization rate study. Biggest consideration here is building's age, parking's not 1-to-1, and we've got wood frame construction. In a high level, the attached capitalization rate summary contains obviously figures in addition to my rebuttal, which outlines the macroeconomic factors such as borrowing costs heading into the valuation date. It includes 6 sales in their calculations. That's on page 12 of the study. The sales range between 5.26 to 7.11%. So the range for buildings built between 1946 and 1969 in the study is between 5.75 and 6.5%. I've applied 5.75%, which is the bottom of that range in terms of a cap rate. And it's to acknowledge likely the modest finishings it has from a 1955 build and the age itself, obviously, and then it is in a good location. So my proposed revised value is at 726,000, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Does the assessor have any questions of the applicant's evidence presented?
I do not at this time. Thank you. I do have a rebuttal evidence for the cap rate sales analysis, but I can wait for when it's appropriate to.
Okay. Okay, so we'll allow the panel to ask questions. Ms. Linkletter, any questions of the applicant's evidence?
Just one question. Do you know how big the individual suites are?
I do not have that information. Sorry, Ms. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Chair, can I just redirect to the assessor?
Of course.
The same question. Mr. Omachinsky, do you have any idea how big the actual suites are?
I don't. I can see here, if you give me one moment, I'll see if they have a size recorded. So in the rent comparables, sorry, I just have to pull it back up here. They'll have like a gross floor area per suite or per unit square foot. So I'm just gonna look at that.
I think it says 875, Mackenzie,
Yeah.
for the subject property in your
Yeah.
chart.
Yeah, he is correct.
All right, I thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the applicant?
Just with regards to the vacancy rate, you said that it was at the time, it was 66% vacant?
Yes.
And is that an ongoing, like, has that been a constant thing, and what is the reason for that, do you know?
So I don't know the reason, but I do know that it's been increasing year over year. Without knowing the exact mindset, whether it's renovation of those units or what have you, what the force is, I've applied. I mean, what I think is a conservative 6% vacancy allowance, acknowledging that the building is predominantly vacant, but without that exact information, I think it's more important to go back to the top end of what the market vacancy is for multifamily and in city of Winnipeg. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. I have no questions of the applicant. Mr. Omachinsky, I guess, I'm not sure, did you submit the rebuttal?
So this was to the cap rate sales analysis for for Atlas or Altus 2025. I know that he briefly mentioned it in his presentation, but I'm not sure if it'd be a good time to go through it now or if
Yeah, we might as well. Yeah.
okay.
Now, does Mrs. Harlan, do you have a copy of the rebuttal evidence presented by the assessor?
Yes, I've sent it to everybody. It should be in your OneDrive file if you're using that. Mr. Kraus, it's in the hearing file that you were working out of, and I've sent it to Mr. Charlevoix Page by email. So
Okay.
let me know if you have a hard time finding it.
All right, bear with us and we'll all try and find it, okay? Thank you.
It's called A&T rebuttal. If that helps.
Okay.
And I can email it to anybody who's having a hard time finding it.
Could I ask where it is, what file it's under? On the,
It will be, that folder is titled 2024-0114 PMA.
I'm sorry, I'm not finding it.
That's okay, I will email it to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Might make it a little bit easier. Does everybody else have it?
Yes.
Should get it in a couple of minutes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I do have a, yes, I'm sorry, there it is. Okay,
Good.
all right. All right. Mr. Omachinsky, when you're ready, please.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have likely seen this before, so I'll go through it quickly.
Thank you.
So this is the City of Winnipeg rebuttal to Altus 2025 cap rate sales analysis. It's just going over some of the Altus capitalization rate sales. So for sales 1 to 3 here, as seen, so 345 Talbot, 677 Maryland, and 738 St. Mary's. There's 1 year of income and expense information, and it is insufficient to calculate a stabilized net operating income, so we believe that's unusable. For sale 4, there's no actual income and expenses involved in the calculation of net operating income, I believe is unusable. And for sale 5, the potential gross income utilized by Altus is not based on historically reported information, so I believe that's incorrectly stabilized. That's on page 1. So then page 2 is just breaking it down for the same thing that was said above. So the 1 year of income and expense information is insufficient information for determining cap rate. And then we have the statement of receipts and disbursements on page 3, and then they'll be similar on page 4, but this is for 677 Maryland Street with only 1 year of income and expense. And then we have the income statement on page 5. Similar to same thing for page 6. Then we will go to page 9 for 100 Maryland. We're seeing that there's no actual data, no real data. And then for page 10, we have the Altus calculation average rent levels are inconsistent with the rents reported in the prior year. And we have on page 11 just the City of Winnipeg stabilization for 2390 McPhillip Street. Showing the capitalization rate of 4.71%. And that would be my rebuttal evidence. Thank you. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Omachinsky, I would ask that you ask that this be added to the future appeals on the docket.
Yes.
Relevant?
Yes, please. Yeah. If it could be carried forward for the rest of the items on the docket, that would be great.
All right. Mr. Charlebois, any response to the rebuttal?
Yeah, I'll just one quick question. I guess it would just be for your point of sales 1 and 3, 1 year income expense information is insufficient and it makes them unusable. I would say, first I would ask, do you know if that's coming from the Appraisal Institute or the IAAO? I'm not sure I've ever heard that. I'm with you in principle that multiple years of stabilization would be preferred, but do you know for a fact that any valuation governing body would say that 1 year would be unusable for a cap rate?
No, I do not. I believe that is the city's stance on for stabilization for calculating the NOI.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor's rebuttal?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
I also have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And neither do I. Okay. So that deals with the rebuttal presented by the assessor. Do we have any questions on the evidence presented by the assessor, Mr. Kraus?
No, thank you.
Ms. Linkletter? Or do we already do?
I don't. Yeah, we did. Thank you. No.
Kind of trying to keep track here. Okay, so any requirement for summary for 70 Smith Street from either party? Mr. Omachinsky first.
No, I don't have a summation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Charlotte?
I'm okay, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes 70 Smith Street, item number 2. Next item on the docket is item number 3. And we are looking at file number 24-2751. Address is 577 Simcoe Street, dealing with a 2025 Realty Assessment Appeal. Mr. Omachinsky, when you are ready, please, 577 Simcoe Street.
Thank you. This is file number 24-2751, roll number 130318260000. Address is 577 Simcoe Street. Roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023. Assessed value is at $939,000. Classification 20, liability T. There's one building with 3 stories. The actual and effective year built is 1956. There is 12 suites and 6 outdoor parking spots. We'll go to page 3, which we have the number of units. We have 10 one-bedroom units and 3 two-bedroom units for a total of 13 units. The average monthly rent per unit is $721.64. The gross potential rent is $112,576. The vacancy rate is 3.6%. The effective gross income is $108,523. The expense rate is 55.46%. The net operating income is $48,336. The capitalization rate is 5.15%. The estimated market value rounded would be $939,000, and the market value per suite would be $72,230.77. On page 4, we have the rent comparables. The effective year built for these comparables ranges from 1926 to 1968. The total number of units range from 8 to 29. The number of bachelor units range from 0 to 7, 1 bedroom 4 to 29, and 2 bedroom 0 to 9. And then the average monthly rent per unit ranges from $712 to $839. Then we'll go to page 5, which is the capitalization rates information, and then the capitalization rate evidence on page 6, which I read previously. And then we have the municipal assessment out excerpts on 7, and now we're going to the aerial photo of where the property lies with a street photo of the property itself. And then on page 9 to 11, we have my apologies, the income and expense and rent roll. And then 2 highlights, just because there wasn't a net operating income put into the income and expense report, I just had on page 9 the total income less the expense for the net operating income compared to the model net operating income. And that would be my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to the assessor. Mr. Shadabo, any questions on the assessor's evidence presented?
I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. First, I'll just confirm this was a model generated value put forward today.
Yes, it is.
Second, I'll just go back to the cap rate chart provided by the city, which is, I think, the one on page 5. Range there between 5 to 6 for these low rise from the third party brokers. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. This again, 1950s build. It's a 56, I believe, this property.
Yes, I believe so. Is
that right? That's
Yeah.
what I have it as 56. Okay. Again, I'll just ask you, would you put that in the top end of the range in terms of quality and quality of stock? And would you put it at the bottom end of the range of capitalization rates?
So I'd more so point to the city of Winnipeg, the 20th and 80th percentile for low rise being 4.75 to 5.45. And I believe that the 5.15 kind of sits in the middle of that range, which I do think is appropriate for the property.
Would you agree that, I guess then the city of Winnipeg range is an outlier to what the people advertising these for sale saying?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. So, just, I mean, given there's 2 different ranges, but would you still think that these would belong in maybe the top half in terms of the quality, in terms of the bottom end of the brokerage range. Would you still agree with that, given the fact that it's a 1950s build?
Yeah, I can't speak too much to the quality. Obviously, it is 1956, so that would be dated, but I wasn't able to inspect the property or get images of the interior. So I wouldn't speak to to that.
Okay. Yeah, and more, sorry, I'm speaking to the quality. We're talking about a wood frame structure that's, coming up on its 70th birthday. So that's more, I had the same issues in finding interior images. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay.
Thank you. And Mr. Charlebois, would you mind stating that you like to carry forward that rebuttal?
I would like to carry forward that rebuttal and sort of that sort of summation I made on it from the previous. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Linklater, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Just one question, and also in regards again to the parking. This building has 13 suites, correct?
Correct.
And 6 outdoor parking spots, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So again, that would be a deterrent, I'm thinking, for an investor.
Yes, that would be a deterrent for an investor.
All right. I thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor?
Yeah, just with regards to the rent, I think you briefly went over, because you have within your assessment, you've got the total rent at 112, and then the forms within your submission, it was, I think, at 98 or something. And is there a reason why you've gone higher? Maybe I just didn't hear what.
So I decided to go with the model value because it still brought the net operating income in the end below what the actual net operating income would be. So I believe that the model value is still reasonable for this property.
And you're basing the model value on the comparables, like just in terms of like the model generated, but you're using the rent comparables to just show that the model generated rent is something that you agree with in terms of. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Mr. Omachinsky, just to follow up on that question by Mr. Kraus, I'm looking at 9. Did you analyze or have any comments on the statement on page 9 of your brief regarding the income statement issued to the city? Submitted, pardon me.
Sorry, this would be on page 9.
9 of your brief?
Yeah, so below that I just had broken down the reported income and then added up the reported expenses. That was my analysis for page 9.
Okay, so when you look at that income and expense statement, I'm not sure if you analyzed it, but do you agree with what was submitted there? That would be my only question.
Nothing is jumping out at me that would put me in disagreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Charlebois. Allow us to find your brief here, please. Mr. Charlebois, 577 Simcoe Street, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a 3-story multifamily building built in 1956, site area of 5773 square feet, 13 units, 10 one-bed, and 3 two-bed. Page 6 of my brief contains a street view image of the subject property from the exterior. Current assessment is $939,000 in the residential class. I'm going to set aside the cost and sales comparison approaches, focusing on the income. That's going to begin on page 13 of my report. We are applying the 2022 actual potential gross income of $97,133. We are applying a market vacancy of 3.6% to that figure, as in line with the assessment. We are applying the stabilized actual expenses, which is an adjustment of $44,932. That gives me my NOI there and sorry, I'll just get the page number. On page 15, you can see it of 50,664. And then in my my reconciliation of value, I've applied a 6% capitalization rate to this one. And this again is going to go from age and quality of construction, again being a wood frame building, coming up on its 70th birthday. A less strong location than the last property, and high level summary of the attached cap rate study that I've relied on. 6 sales used to determine capitalization rate studies, or used to determine capitalization rates for multifamily assets. The sales range from 5.26 to 7.11. Stratified that range for buildings built between 1946 and 1969. The range for those properties is 5.75 to 6.5. I've applied the 6 here in light of the age and quality of construction again, and that gives my proposed revised value at 881,000. Oh, sorry, I have that is a mistake. My proposed revised value is 834,000. I'm just noting that's a mistake in my notes, so I apologize. It's 834,000. I misspoke there.
Okay,
My apologies.
thank you, Mr. That is your evaluation on page 15.
Correct. Sorry, my notes had the wrong number in it. I apologize.
No problem. Okay, thank you. Mr. Omachinsky, any questions of the applicant's presentation?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Linklater, any questions of the applicant's information?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple. Mr. Charlebois Page, I'm just wondering, and I'm sorry, you may have stated this. The previous property, the cap rate was at 5.75. These buildings, I'm going to dare to say quite similar, but this cap rate is 6.
I
So
thought, oh, sorry.
So I'm just wondering the increase, sorry.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I apologize for speaking over you. On that last one, I felt that the location of that one was slightly superior. Again, this is, if you look at sort of our cap rate study, we have 1946 to 1969 builds sliding between 5.75 to 6.5. Where I've been putting that 5.75 from my perspective is where sort of they're at the top end of that range. And I know it's difficult for these older properties without interior photos. But for this one, I chose the 6. I think it'd be difficult, to be honest with you, Ms. Chair, to stratify sort of the difference between those two without an inspection and without, more detailed. So whether it's 5.75 or 6, I just feel like it's certainly in that range, and not in the low 5s. And that'd be my best and most honest answer.
All right, thank you. And just in regards to the suite mix, would you say this building has an inferior suite mix, having 10 one-bedrooms?
Tough to say. You could say it's inferior, but I think with within this sort of asset, it's a mixed bag. Certainly, these things that are built before 1960s, I don't think it'd be inferior to the data set, but maybe inferior to the broader scheme of multifamily assets. Is that a fair sort of answer?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no
That's
problem.
all my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Linklater. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the applicant?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions either. Mr. Omachinsky, would you mind stating that you would like to add your rebuttal relevant to this subject?
Yes, I would like to add my rebuttal relevant to the subject and subjects carried forward.
Okay, thank you. Any requirement for summary by either party? Mr. Omachinsky first.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Charlebois.
No, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 577 Simcoe Street. Next item on the docket is item number 4. File number 24-2715. Address 742 Dorchester Avenue. And we're dealing with a 2025 Realty Assessment Appeal. Can the assessor please wait until we find your brief, please?
Yeah.
There we are. Okay. Mr. Omachinsky, when you're ready, 742 Dorchester Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is file number 24-2715, roll number 12022614000. The address is 742 Dorchester Avenue. Rule year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023, assessed value 941,000, classification 20, liability T. There is one building with 2 stories. The actual and effective year built is 1923. The number of suites is 6, and the outdoor parking is 6 as well. We will go down to page 3. We have the income value summary. So for number of units, we have 2 one-bedroom units and 4 two-bedroom units for a total of 6 units, with the average monthly rent per unit sitting at $1,216.51. The gross potential rent is $87,589. The vacancy rate is 3.2%. The effective gross income is $84,786. The expense rate is 46.72%. The net operating income is $45,174. The capitalization rate is 4.8%. The estimated market value rounded would be 941,000, with the market value per suite being $156,833.33. On the following page, we have the rent comparables. So that ranges from 1909 to 1973, for total number of units being 11 to 168. Total number of bachelor units ranging from 0 to 1. Number of one-bedroom would be 2 to 119. Number of two-bedroom would be 3 to 48. And number of three-bedroom would be 0 to 12. The average monthly rent per unit for the comparables ranges from $1,205 to $1,762. Page 5 would be the capitalization rate information, and 6 is the evidence, which was read in previously. Then we have the municipal assessment excerpts on 7. So we'll go to page 8, which is a street photo of the house. It looks like there might be work being done. It just looks like possibly just a repair of the front steps railing. And then on the picture below is just the location, a sky view. And then we have some interior photos on page 9, 10, 11, and 12, just of the property. And then we have on 13 to 16 would be the statement of earnings for 2020, 2022, 2021, and then some previous years. And I just wanted to point to just the maintenance and decorating for these previous years have been pretty consistently high, around $3,000 per unit for multiple years. And also, sorry, on page 14 would just be the gross potential rent, the rent roll for 742 Dorchester. And yeah, that would be my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Omachinsky. Mr. Charlebois, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few. First, I'll just have you or confirm with you, it's a model generated value put forward?
It is, yes.
Okay. So you've included the income and expense statements from 19 to 22, as you touched on. The median NOI over those years, I calculated at 33,645. Would you agree that the modeled NOI of 45,174 would be high in comparison to that figure?
I would agree, but it's also partially why I mentioned the maintenance and decorating being high or consistently high as well.
And so the building age of this one is a little older than the previous couple files, right? This is a 23 build with wood frame. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you think, like, in my opinion, I guess maybe I'll ask you if you agree. Do you think that the maintenance on a building of this age of that construction would would increase, especially if you're trying to seek modern rents. Like I think you saw those images there. Sort of to achieve those rents, do you not think that the maintenance on these would be substantially higher?
I do believe it would be higher, yes.
Okay. One last question again, and I'll just go back to that chart on, I screwed up, sorry, page 5. You've got a range here of 5 to 6 from the brokers and 4.75 to just shy of 5.5 there from the city. This property that's built in 1923. Do you think that the model has an appropriate cap there? I think, what is it, 4.8% on this one?
Yeah, I do agree that the building is much older. I would point to the location being quite, like in River Heights is generally a desirable neighborhood, and the suite or the unit count being at 6, it opens up the pool of potential investors quite a bit, which I think would affect the capitalization rate as well. And then just from the interior photos, like although I can't speak to the structural integrity, but I haven't seen any permits taken out for the work, that the interior does look nice and kept or upkept.
I would agree. Upkept is the word I would use. And then for me, like, just to comment on that is I mean, if anyone here has ever lived in a Century home or owned one, that's maybe more where the concern would be from is what's, beneath the walls and beneath the drywall and paint versus clearly it's been upkept. I would agree with your comments there. So just to confirm there, I know you said the location, but do you think that this property belongs at the bottom end of the cap rate range? Or even an outlier compared to the brokers. Would you agree with that?
I would say that it'd be closer to the 20th percentile that was stated by the city. So the lower end, it's not the absolute lowest, but.
And that's interesting. Could I just maybe ask you a broader question then? Do you think that these types of assets are sort of the blue chip of multifamily? Because I think principally for me, like when I would set out a scale of, your higher end multifamily assets, your highest performers versus, you get down to your almost non-investment grade. For me, that blue chip stuff that would be at the bottom, efficiency, a new location, all that stuff, access to transit, all those good things that would support a strong income stream for a long time. It seems to be a different opinion on these is where I would have them up near the top of the range of performance in terms of age and all that. Do you think they belong? I guess in saying that, with the blue chip assets, the big shiny new buildings, you believe that these belong in that sort of range with cap, eh?
I believe that the model cap rate is reasonable for where it's at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitaker, any questions?
Yes, just a couple. Mr. Omachinsky, I'm assuming that this property was originally a single family dwelling?
I'm actually unsure if it was, but if you give me a moment, I can check the history. I would be under the impression that it would be, but I just want to double check. I apologize. I don't see anything in the notes here, so I can't speak to that.
Okay, and do you know the last time it was inspected?
I do not know. Sorry.
Okay. So you and Mr. Charlebois Page were discussing the condition of the building. I think you were both or you were stating anyway that you felt the building had been looked after and kept up or updated.
Yes,
And you're making that statement just by looking at the pictures, correct?
correct.
Okay. You would agree that the pictures are staged in terms of the furnishings?
Yes, they would be stage photos.
Okay. Because I can certainly see that the house has rads. So I'm assuming it has a boiler. Would you know if the boiler has been updated, the furnace?
There hasn't been any permits taken out, but I can just when I was reviewing to see if there had been any work completed, just because of that street photo, I thought maybe there had been additional, but
Do you know if the house still has knob and tube wiring?
sorry, I'm just looking here. So I have in 2021, there was an install emergency light fixture in boiler room, wire from closet source, positioned to illuminate boiler components in an emergency. And then we have in 2022, install 3¼ inch, or sorry, 3/4 inch double check valve upon or installation of backflow prevention devices.
Right. So
Okay,
it still
please go
has a
ahead.
boiler.
Yes, it still would have a boiler as of 2022.
Okay. And we're not sure about the knob and tube. And what about windows? Just the windows look original to me.
Yeah, I don't see anything in regards to windows being replaced in the permit information I have here.
Okay.
Mhm.
I thank you. That's all my questions.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Omachinsky, a couple of quick questions. I'm looking on page 13, maintenance and decorating. So we're looking at approximately $5,000 a suite for maintenance and decorating. Is that right? 31,600.
Yeah,
Okay. Any
yeah,
idea
for 2022.
actual vacancy rate is on this in this building?
I think so as reported, just on the next page there on page 14, it looks like there had been one vacant unit, as of December 31st of 2022.
Okay. All right. And there is some parking income, so I guess there is some spots located at the rear of the property.
Yes, I believe there is 6.
Okay. And these pictures, you know when they were taken?
I know that it would have been prior to 2020.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's all my questions. Thank you. Mr. Charlebois, when you're ready, please, 742 Dorchester Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a 2.5-story multifamily building built in 1923. Site area of 6435 square feet, contains 6 units, 2 1-bed, 4 2-bed. It's page 6 has got an exterior photo of the subject property. Current assessment is 941 in the residential class. I'll be setting aside the sales comparison and the cost approach, focusing on the income, page 13 of my report. We are applying the 2022 actual PGI of 93,819. To that, we're applying a 7.6% vacancy, and that's due to the 2020 to 2022 performance. You can see on page 16 of my brief has that summary of that performance. From there, the assessed expense allowance of 39,612 or 46.7% of their calculated PGI. For mine, I'm using 46 $1,871 or 51.7% of my calculated EGI. This gives me a calculated NOI of $43,710. It's not too different from the current assessed NOI in terms of they're at $45,174 and I'd be at $43,710. For this property, I've used a 6.25% capitalization rate. This is derived from my attached study. Obviously, we stratify by age. It's the pre-1946 pre-1946 builds. They range from 6.10 to 6.6%. I have applied a modest cap rate within that range at 6.25%. Again, the attached capitalization rate study will have 6 sales ranging from 5.26 to 7.11. My proposed revised value is $699,000 rounded. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois, and you would like to enter your rebuttal into evidence?
Please, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just,
All right, Mr. Romachinsky, any questions of the applicant's evidence?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the applicant's evidence?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Charlebois, location of this property, are we in Crescentwood? Or in the?
Let me pull up the specific neighborhood, Mr. Chair. I don't know how to answer that. Give me 1 second.
Kind of looks like off the corner of Grosvenor and Wellington Crescent. 2 blocks south, I believe.
It is. You are
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Any comments when you're applying that cap rate of that location? Is superior or inferior?
I've weighted it at the bottom end of the range from 6.1 to 6.6 in consideration. But I would note that the sales included in our cap rate study are all in good locations, so no specific adjustment would have been made. But in consideration of all of the parts, yes, I put it at the 625, given the range in my study between 6.1 to 6.6.
Okay, thank you.
Could I make one clarification? I know Miss Linklater did brought up something that was in the cross between me and the assessor. I just want to note when I'm speaking about the subject property, or when I was speaking about the aesthetics and sort of in terms of upkeep, in terms of paint and the appliances in the kitchen. I can make no comment besides this is a wood frame structure that turned 100 years old at the valuation date. I would not, from a structural standpoint, a utility standpoint, as you noted with the radiator. I'll just, without keeping my personal thoughts too far into this, I'd hate to be a contractor to open the walls. But anyway, that'd be I just want to clarify that point from when I'm speaking about upkeep, it's certainly from an aesthetic standpoint in those staging photos. So just to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Could we take a brief recess at this time, please?
Yes, I'm just going to close off this file and then we'll.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any requirement for summary by either party? Mr. Romachinsky?
No, thank you.
Mr. Charlebois?
I do not. Thank you.
That concludes 742 Dorchester Avenue. We'll now take a 10-minute recess. Please, Mrs. Harlan. Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. I will now call the hearing back to order. Next item on the docket is item number 5, file number 24-1285. Address is 587 Broadway, and we're dealing with a 2025 Realty Assessment Appeal. Mr. Omachinsky, I note there's a preliminary issue here requesting a non-cooperation.
Yes, there is.
Okay, thank you. Can you please introduce the property? and then when we'll do with the non-cooperation request, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is file number 24-1285. Roll number 1209-122-1000. The address is 587 Broadway. Roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023, assessed value 948,000, classification 20, liability T. There's one building with 3 stories. The actual and effective year built is 1955. The number of seats is 12, and there is 6 outdoor parking spots. I'm requesting that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for the non-cooperation section 53 3B of the MAA, and if a reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follow section 543.2 of the MAA. Then I'll get everyone just to follow me down to page 9 with the this will be the letter that was sent, and then on page 10 the signature, and then 11 would be the signature as well, or the information that it was delivered. So yeah, that would be my request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Omachinsky. Mr. Charlebois, I assume you were aware of this. Any comments you'd like to make?
No, I was unable to get any further data, so I have no comments to make.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the assessor? No? Mr.
Not for
Sharp?
me, no.
Oh, okay, thank you. Excuse me. Ms. Linkletter, any questions of the assessor's presentation or request for non-cooperation?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor's request for non-cooperation?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions either.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, if I can interrupt, I'm sorry, I just saw something. Can I ask the question of Mr. Omachinsky? Thank you. Mr. Omachinsky, on page 10, for the second item under June 12th, it says this item was rerouted. No, sorry. It says item redirected to recipient's new address.
Yes.
Sorry, and I guess I'm just looking what would that new address be? Because I see the letter that you have on page 9, that it's at 20152 Donald. So is that in reference to that address, or is it in reference to a new address as stated? And if so, what is the new address?
I will get that information in just one moment. So the current mailing address is C-O Asteroid Management Limited. Trying to get the full address here. Let's see. It was 224-530 Century Street would be the current address.
Okay. But we have no record of that in your presentation. And on page 9, your address is reading 201 52 Donald Street.
Right, so I had, the item was rerouted due to a processing error just on page 10. And then it had been processed, departed, arrived, and then delivered with the signature.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that I don't see that new address anywhere in your evidence. So anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Charlebois, any comments relating to that new information asked by the board member?
No, Mr. Chair, I think it's difficult to say. I would note that is a discrepancy there. There's a few lines that do say, customer addressing error found, attempting to correct. I tend to agree with the fact that there is nothing that says it got delivered to that new address, but I would leave that with the board's hands.
Okay. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Linkletter, I think not. So, Mr. Charlebois, does the address, does the signatory name jive with the owners of the property? Do you know?
No, and that's, Mr. Chair, when you asked me, I reached out for information and wasn't able to get any updates on that, but I did ask if that individual would be someone, who was on file for that property, but I did not receive a response. So.
Did they confirm in your questioning that they'd received the meeting?
No, I hadn't got a response. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
No response. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Sorry, could I just redirect to Mr. Omachinsky again? Just one brief question. Sorry. Mr. Omachinsky, just on page 2, under your subject sale history, this property last sold in 2005, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and there's been no sale since then?
Not to my knowledge.
Right. Okay, thank you. And then under your request for information, it looks as though they have been sending the information every year from 2013 through to 2020, correct?
Yes, that's what it appears. Yeah.
Okay, and then we suddenly have this breach. All right. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, my question following that is, who initiated a customer addressing error found? Did the owner complain or update the information?
I do not know that information.
Okay. Attempting to correct. And then item redirected to recipient's new address. So, okay. Do you know if the recipient corrected that address? I don't know if you can answer that. I'm just.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to look through just what we have recorded as mail sent, and I'm not seeing a correction from the mail that I'm seeing, but it could very well be there. I'm just unsure, unable to answer.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any further comments from either party before we recess to discuss the presentations from both parties? Mr. Omachinsky and Mr. Charlebois, you're good? Okay.
Nothing.
Mrs. Harlan, we're going to recess and consider the request for non-cooperation. Can you please put both parties out of off and we'll recess right away. Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. I'll call the hearing back to order. Mr. Omachinsky, we have one question for you for clarification about this rerouting of the letter. Can you answer that the original letter went out addressed to a wrong address? We've established that, right? And then somehow
Yes.
it was rerouted. Do you know if a new letter would have been sent with an updated address to allow that letter to get to the final corrected destination?
I would not know if a new letter would be sent, just because,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, with the correct updated address.
I would not know that. There was only, when I was looking at the sent letters, that was the letter that was sent, so it might have been rerouted at Canada
Okay.
Post, I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. That answers our question. Mrs. Harlan, we're gonna go and recess again after that clarification, and we'll make our decision based on this evidence. Thank you, Mrs. Harlan. I will now call the hearing back to order. The board has considered the evidence presented by both parties, and it is our opinion that the request for non-cooperation, not be granted. So, Mr. Omachinsky, we will proceed with you when you are ready, please. 587 Broadway.
Sounds good. Do you want me to reread the first page with the property description?
No, I think that's good. You can continue on with your evidence, please.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll go to page 3, just the income value summary, the number of units. We just have 12 one-bedroom units for a total of 12 units. The average monthly rent per unit is $755.36. The gross potential rent is $108,772. The vacancy rate is 3.6%. The effective gross income is $104,856. The expense rate is 53.42%. The net operating income is $48,842. The capitalization rate is 5.15%. The estimated market value rounded is $948,000, and the market value per suite is $79,000. We'll go to rent comparables. So the range for the effective year built would be 1926 to 1960. The total number of units for the comparables range from 18 to 36. The number of bachelor units is 0 to 18. Number of one bedroom, 6 to 22, and number of three bedroom, 0 to 8. The average monthly rent per unit would be ranging from $761 to $962. The next page 5 is the capitalization rate information provided by the city, and then we have the evidence on 6, the act excerpts on 7, and then we have on page 8 aerial photo of the property's location. Then there's a street photo, and what I could find online is the layout of the units below that. And that would be my presentation. Thank you for listening. I'm open for questions.
Thank you to the assessor, Mr. Charlebois. Any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple here. So first, could I confirm it's a model generated value?
Yes.
Second, I'll just confirm the range there of the brokerage firm showing about a 5 to 6% cap for the low rise stuff on page 5 of your brief, sorry, in the cap rate chart.
Yeah.
Again, this is another 1955, a 50s build anyway, a 55 build. Just sort of, again, do you believe that it should fall in that sort of bottom end of the range there? This one's got a 515 on it, similar to the other properties we've heard today. Do you think that it's appropriate within that range?
I would say it's appropriate if we're looking like more so towards the city of Winnipeg, the 20th to 80th percentile, it kind of falling in the middle range of that.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater?
Again, the parking, Mr. Omachinsky, I think you've got 12 one-bedroom suites in this building with 6 outdoor spaces. So again, I'm going to suggest that an investor would find this a deterrent, correct?
Yeah, I would agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all my questions.
Thank you, and I have no questions of the assessor. Mr. Charlebois, bear with us a second, please. Mr. Charlebois, 587 Broadway, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3-story multifamily building built in 1955. Site area 6117 square feet, 12 units, all one bed. Exterior photo on page 6, current assessments 948 in the residential class. Income approach starts on page 13. Reconciliation of value on page 16, outlining my valuation inputs. In the first column there in the chart, you'll see the 2020 actual income and expense. I've used the assessed PGI and expenses as they're in line with sort of that 2020 increased by an inflationary amount into the valuation date. So I've used the same assessed NOI as the assessor at 48,842. The difference here being the capitalization rate again. Not to drone on the subject, but another 50s build. The range we're using is between 575 and 65. That's in the attached study. 6 sales in my attached study, 5.26 to 7.11. This property is old, wood frame, and sorry, I shouldn't say old. It is an older building, built with a wood frame, less than 1-to-1 parking. And out of that, I feel like I've been conservative in applying the 575. My reconciliation of value there is 849,000 rounded down, obviously from 426. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Mr. Omachinsky, any questions of the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater?
Yes, just one question, Mr. Charlebois Page. You've given this property a 5.75 cap rate, correct?
Correct.
And I am just wondering, in comparison to a previous property on Simcoe, which you gave it a 6, did you give this one a lower cap because of location?
With respect, Madam Chair, I think for me on this one, it was difficult. I had no inspection, and the photos I had were very limited. I think you can see, and without any specific cause, the point for me would be to be at the conservative end of my range for my age bracket, and that other one had that specific specific thought from me. But again, I think principally from my capitalization rate standpoint, I'd say that these properties belong sort of more at the more conservative end of the range. And I think that's the sort of staunch difference between myself and the assessment authority. So.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, could I just redirect to the assessor for one moment?
Of course.
Thank you. Mr. Omachinsky, this property has 12 one-bedroom, correct?
Correct.
Again, would an investor not view this property with some hesitation simply because they're all one bedrooms? Because you're getting more income with 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms.
It's
building with,
sorry.
Yeah.
I'll let you
Sorry, a building with more larger suites.
Right. Yeah. It's possible. I can't speak to an investor. So yeah, there might be investors that are looking for more bedrooms or more gross space. But I do think that like if we look at just the market value per suite with the current assessment being at 79,000 per suite, I think we're in a reasonable amount for the property.
I thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Charlebois, I have a question for you. This has happened a couple of times today when we see the photos. These are called wood frame buildings, and yet they're masonry, full masonry. Does that make a difference in the quality of construction of the property and maybe a cap rate application?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, are you just noting specifically with me referencing the type of construction? Is that what you're? Yeah. Okay. So for me, yes. And I guess principally speaking, in my education and valuation, wood frame assets have a lower depreciation table than something that's built masonry. And I know that's, I may be, in its application to the income approach and sort of tied to the income, what I'd say is that durability of the physical asset is one of the strongest points against, losing your income or sort of contemplating the durability of income for a future investment. So when I note that, I would note that, potentially expenses would be higher and things of that nature would be contemplated in the market if a purchaser was taking on an older asset like this.
So when we look at the property, it's 100% masonry construction, the subject.
I have this as wood frame.
Yeah, but they're all, for instance, this one is all brick construction, masonry.
Yeah, so the difference would be this is that when I say wood frame, brick on wood frame would be what I'm talking about with wood frame. Sort of the masonry construction would be, a cement pour, and come up full cement wall. And there's variations of that depending on year of construction. But you are right. This is not considered masonry construction because what it is the actual structural integrity of the building is built on the wood frame. And then the brick is the aesthetic exterior and the most outer layer of that. So sorry, when we're speaking about that, it's from the structural standpoint, not from the aesthetic.
Okay,
So
it's just brick veneer.
yes, correct. And then your difference would be, you might see a stone building that's from century, you know what I mean? An old 19, and then up to, if you go to a high-rise condo that's built in 2022, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be, in my experience, that's going to be a cement masonry construction. So more of an institutional building, newer end commercial building. So that's the difference I'm pointing at.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for the explanation. Okay.
No
That's
problem.
all my questions. Mr. Omachinsky, any requirement for summary?
No requirement for summary. Thank you.
Mr. Charlebois?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that concludes 587 Broadway. Next item on the docket is item number 6. File number 24-09. Address is 530 Young Street. Mr. Omachinsky, when you're ready, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is file number 24-2109, roll number 13051215000. The address is 530 Young Street, roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is at $954,000, classification 20, liability T. There's one building with 2 stories. The effective and actual year built is 1959. The number of suites is 13, and outdoor parking, we have 4 spots. We'll go to page 3, which has the income value summary. So for the number of units, we have 2 bachelor, 10 1-bedroom, and 1 2-bedroom for a total of 13 units. The average monthly rent per unit would be $698.99. The gross potential rent is $109,042. The vacancy rate is 3.6%. The effective gross income is $105,116. The expense rate is 53.72%. Net operating income we have at $48,648. Capitalization rate is 5.1%. Estimated market value rounded would be $954,000, with a market value per suite at only $73,384.62. The following page, we have the rent comparables. For these comparables, we have an effective year built range of 1928 to 1961. The total number of units range from 11 to 29. Number of bachelor units range from 0 to 7. 1-bedroom 11 to 19, and 2-bedroom 0 to 3. The average monthly rent per unit ranges from $725 to $773. The following pages 5 is the capitalization rate information, and we have the evidence on page 6. Then the municipal act excerpts on 7, and then on 8 we have the aerial photo of the property, and then a street photo showing the property itself with and then on pages 9 to 15 we have just some interior photos of the property. And then on 16, we just have a permit. The issue date would be back in 2010, but it's interior and exterior alterations of a 2-story 13-unit multi-residential building, replacing the roofing and painting the exterior. And they're also to include interior alterations to include drywall, flooring, and fixture replacement. Electrical and plumbing work to be done as well. And this declared construction value would be $226,416. Following page, on page 17, we just have the income and expense. And I could point to the net operating income being reported at 60,552. And then at the bottom, on page 19, we just have the rent roll. And that would be my presentation. I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Charlebois, any questions of the assessor's evidence presented?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to confirm again, this is a model generated value put forward?
Yes, I'm going with the model value.
Okay, and I'll just take you quickly to that cap chart that you have on page 6, and sorry to be repeating this, but cap page 5. Range there is 5 to 6, and this one's obviously, I think, is it 5-1? I think I have it at from the assessment. Again, you've noted before, maybe the city assessment chart range is on the lower end. The Altus range is on the higher end. The brokers represent sort of that middle ground at the 5 to 6. For me, I think this one's low at 5-1. Do you think this asset belongs in the lower or even middle end of the range, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, I would just still point to the city of Winnipeg, where if it's at 5-1, it's kind of on the middle to about middle end. So I would go with the model cap rate.
Okay, thank you. And those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor?
You just on page, going back to page 16. So I understand this correctly, there was $226,000 worth of renovations done on the building at that time, and this is 2009?
Yeah, so the issue date would have been back in March of 2010.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
And just one quick question. Mr. Omachinsky, does the model take into consideration location of a building? Like, as in location within the city?
Yes, the model would consider location.
Okay. So would it consider street?
I don't work in modeling, so I'm not sure how specific it would be. So I wouldn't be able to answer that question with confidence.
Okay. So when it says, when you're saying it does take into consideration location, does it take into consideration sort of the aspects given in that particular neighborhood? Sort of social, economic?
Right. I wouldn't know confidently enough to answer that.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. I have two quick questions, Mr. Waczynski. Location, are we located between Sargent and Ellis, 1 block away, I guess, from the University of Winnipeg? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. And my last question, the pictures that were presented by you, do you know when they were taken?
I actually do not have a date of when they were taken. I would, yeah, sorry, I actually don't know the exact date.
Okay. Do you know if they represent the current condition of the property? Recent condition, or you can't answer that?
I can't answer that. I imagine, yeah, sorry, I can't answer that, no.
Okay. That's my only questions. Thank you. Excuse me. Mr. Charlebois, bear with us 1 second, please. 530 Young Street. When you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a 2.5-story multifamily building built in 1955. Site area of 4,905 square feet, 13 units, 2 batch, 12 one-bed and 1 two-bed. Page 6 of my brief contains an exterior photo. Current assessment is $858 in the residential class. Set aside the cost and sales, went into income. Just pulling that up here on page 13 of my report. And then on page 16, you'll see the valuation with all my inputs. I've applied the 2022 actual PGI of 113,580. I've applied a market vacancy of 3.6%, and I've adjusted for the 2303 of bad debt. That issue seems to be in the 3 years reviewed as present in 2 of them and worse in 2020. We are applying an adjustment of 60,344, which represents 55% of our calculated EGI. This is slightly higher than the 56,469 that the assessment authority is putting on. The sum of all of the different inputs is not very different. My NOI is 49,319. I think the assessment authority is using 48,648. So maybe, what's that, $600 and change. Again, I've submitted my capitalization rate study. Sales ranging from 526 to 711. Stratified 1946 to 1969. That range is 575 to 6.5. I've applied 575 to this property. You know, it's again another one of those 50s builds, and we've got modest finish from the images I was able to obtain. And Mr. Chair, maybe just for you know, to add on to that question you just had there at the end, the questions included in my brief, I'm not sure if they're the same as the assessors, but those are from the website at the property's profile currently. So that would be up to date. So yeah, my reconciliation of value, sorry, just to end off, I have 857 rounded downward. And I'm just noting I misquoted the current assessment in my opening, but my value is 858. Sorry, that I'm seeking for my reconciliation. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. All right, Mr. Omachinsky, any questions of the applicant's evidence?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater, any questions of the applicant? Pardon, yeah, applicant, right.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions either. Mr. Omachinsky, any requirement for summary?
No requirement, thank you.
Mr. Charlebois?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. That concludes item number 6, 530 Yonge Street. Next property in the docket is item number 7, file number 24-2298. Address is 86 Yonge Street, and we're dealing with a 2025 realty assessment appeal. Mr. Omachinsky, when you are ready, please, 86 Yonge Street.
Okay, thank you. This is file number 24-2298, roll number 120909630000. The address is 86 Yonge Street. Roll year 2025, reference date April 1st, 2023. The assessed value sits at $972,000, classification 20, liability T. There's one building with 3 stories. The actual year built would be 1916, and the effective year built is 1960. There is 12 suites and 4 outdoor parking spots. We will go down to page 3. It's just a breakdown of the number of units, and it's we have 12 2-bedroom units for a total number of 12 units. The average monthly rent per unit is $850 and 49 cents. Then we have gross potential rent of $122,471. Vacancy rate of 3.6%. The effective gross income is $118,062. The expense rate would be 56.59%. The capitalization rate we have at 5.25%. The market value rounded is 972,000, with a market value per suite at 81,000. And then we will go to page 4. This is a Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation property. So I broke down the rents from the CMHC private apartment average rents. So that on page 4 we have the zone and the year in construction, and then on page 5 we have the structure size, and then at the bottom of page 5 there we take the combined averages of the zone, year, and building count to get an average of $1,094.33 per unit, which gives us a market CMHC potential rent of $157,584 with a modeled rent compared to our modeled rent, of $122,471. So that gives us a percentage of market rents. We're sitting at 77.72%, which I believe is appropriate for the model. And then for rent comparables, we have the effective year built ranging from 1911 to 1964. The total number of units ranging from 16 to 48. Number of bachelor would be 0 to 18, 1 bedroom 2 to 24, and 2 bedroom 0 to 24. The average monthly rent per unit would be between $761 and $1,037. The next page is this the capitalization rate information, followed by the capitalization rate evidence. Then we have the municipal assessment excerpts, and then on page 10 we have an aerial photo of just where the property lies, and then a street photo of the property. And then on the page 11 and 12, 11 to 15, we have the rent roll and then the income and expense information. And then just on page 12, I just point out that they're the Manitoba Housing Rehabilitation Corporation subsidy, just showing that it is being subsidized as such. And that would be my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Omachinsky. Mr. Charlebois, any questions on the assessor's evidence presented?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Just bear with me.
Sure.
Sorry. All right, I'm here. I've arrived. So first, could I confirm that this is a model generated value put forward today?
Yeah, this is model generated.
So again, the range we've talked about at length, we won't go through it again, but it's 5 to 6 from the brokerages, a little bit different from yours, a little bit different from mine end, but that's sort of where we're at.
Yeah.
So this thing's built in this property's built in 1946. It's wood frame. I know you've noted an effective age update on it, but the original structure was built in 1916. So again, before we go into any sort of adjustment or anything to do with, the way the asset actually operates, do you feel like the 5.25% is appropriate as a market cap for this type of asset in that age range?
Yes, I do believe that I would be going with the model cap rate, it being appropriate. Yeah.
Okay, so I've noted on page 5, you've adjusted the rents. And now I understand this is typical practice, that somewhere between 70 and 80% of the prime CMHC rents is maybe, I don't want to say typical practice, but is a practice that's, been applied to this type of asset in, previous years and day to day. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would typically do this if it's a subsidized property.
Sure. Okay. Now, in terms of the cap rate, I understand there's case law from the MMB that sort of talks about adjustments specific to do with rent geared to income properties. Did you make any adjustment? It's a modeled value, so you didn't make any adjustment to the 5.25. But do you think that there's a higher risk profile given the way this business operates?
Yes, I would think that there would be a higher risk, but if it was an investor and they were to run it at the highest and best use, I don't know if they would continue running it as a subsidized property.
I would tend to agree with that statement. The problem is I think there's overlying economic factors that would preclude that. I mean, you know what I mean? It'd be ideal if every property within an economic market was operating at its highest and best use. But in order for us to operate as a society, we obviously need places that are for less fortunate or what have you, rent geared to income situations, which are not always less fortunate. It's, you know, a diverse group of people living in the city. I would just say, do you think that even in that notion of going to market, you think an asset like this would have higher deferred maintenance, lower construction cost than its typical market participant? Meaning that if I was operating a building to generate income, and you were operating the same asset across the street, and you were subsidized rents, do you think that one that's generating income would have a higher return of investment back into the asset than the one that's rent geared to income?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I guess principally what I'm getting at here is something that's operating at a market and is generating income. Do you think there's more reinvestment in that asset than one that's rent geared to income?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. So I thank you. That concludes my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the assessor?
Just, you've stated the effective date as 1960. And do you know what was done in order to bring it up from 1916 to 1960? Like,
I was not able to find permits for the description of what was completed. So I do not know I don't know the exact information that was done.
okay, but so that's a 40-year jump. Would that be a pretty substantial investment into the property, or is that just decorative features, or like based on your knowledge of past?
Yeah, likely it would be substantial if we're adding 40 years of effective age. I have more experience in the resident single family dwelling residential, and if we were putting an effective age like that, it would be normally allude to substantial renovations.
But with the multifamily, you're not 100% sure what that might be.
Yeah, I don't exactly have the experience to answer confidently yet.
Okay, thank you.
Could I follow up on that just to confirm something?
Of course.
That effective age calculation, that is a subjective tool for the assessor. Is that correct? There's no specific, if I have a house and I do my kitchen and it's from 1980, there's not a base input that you guys adjust by, right? This is an appraisal theory, an assessor's opinion, sort of an adjustment. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it is also, and it's also assisted by the model.
Okay.
But yeah, it would be under the appraiser's discretion, or the assessor's opinion for when they're adding effective age.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Linkletter, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, parking, Mr. Omachinsky, you know, 4 spaces, 12 suites. Even though this is Winnipeg housing, doesn't necessarily have to remain Winnipeg housing.
Right.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're saying that effectively with your value of $972,000, that an investor would be paying this amount of money for this building, given its current physical condition?
Correct. Yes, that's what I would be saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you yourself did not inspect the property, correct?
No, I have not inspected the property.
Do you know when it was last inspected?
I don't know by last inspected by our department. I'm seeing that it was inspected for like plumbing and electrical, but there's no photos or anything that could that would describe the type of inspection or like the what kind of inspection other than electrical and plumbing.
Okay. Do you know how long this has been a Winnipeg housing property?
I see. No, I do not know.
And page 10 of your brief. You've just got an exterior picture of the property.
Mhm.
Just and given its year of build 1916, would you say that building would have a stone foundation?
Yes, I would imagine so. I can confirm that as well if you just give me one moment.
Sure, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, I apologize. I'm in the building or the list of the building information. I don't have anything currently down for the type of foundation.
Okay. Again, looking at your page 10 of the exterior picture,
Mhm.
do you know when that picture was taken?
Yes, I do. It would have been June 2022.
Okay. I'm just going to suggest, does the front door not look as though it's covered in a sheet of plywood?
Yes, it does.
It does. Okay, just thank you. That's
Mhm.
all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Omachinsky, I am on page 5, where
Okay.
you're comparing CMHA rents to the model rent.
Mhm.
And so was the intent on that to show that the model is coming in less than the CMHC model rent, or is it, or did the model use a percentage of that CMHC? Was the model separate in calculating the value?
The model is separate from CMHC. It's
Okay,
just
that's just to display, or just to show that you're 22% less than the CMHC valid model rents. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That.
Could I maybe ask another, sorry could I ask
Yeah.
a follow-up off that? Just for my own brain and curiosity.
Mhm.
If the modeled rent is coming in between that 70 to 80%, like we said, that's like, I guess, what I call typical practice for this type of asset. I guess you don't do the modeling, but it's got an adjustment that's probably not dissimilar from what you're doing up top. Is that a fair point? Because it does come in that range. Is that true?
Sorry, just to help me understand, like
Yeah, so the mod, I'm just curious about that relationship. So you've done the CMHC calculation and checked that it's 20 to 30% under what a market rent would be for this type of asset.
Mhm.
The model must be. I was going to ask you, what specifically is the model doing that's different, because it is sort of coming out in that range, but it is applying some sort of adjustment for rent geared income. Is that a fair point?
Yes, yeah.
It
Yeah, I
is,
guess
like,
something to note too, that it would be the 86 Yonge Street, like the current income level that we have on file, it would be below average, which would also affect the.
Okay, so be flagged in the model as like an asset performing below market. Is that sort of the way that goes?
Mhm.
Okay, Mr. Omachinsky, so on page 2,
Yeah.
how far back does the sales history go? Like this is going back 11 years from 2024. Does it show when Winnipeg Rehab bought this building? I imagine.
It does not, like for the program that we use, the notes will go back to currently 2000.
Okay, and you show no sales history?
Yeah, I'm looking here and there's no sales, and it would come up on the brief.
Yeah, okay. Because I guess normally this owner would purchase privately owned properties and rehab them. I guess, as in the name Rehab Corporation, I guess. Okay, but there's no history there. Okay,
Mm.
all right. And there's no history of permits or anything taken out. Is that correct?
Yeah, there is nothing.
And
Actually, sorry to note, it would be past the effective date, but there was a fire repair taken out in October of 2024, so
oh,
just 3 months ago. But yeah,
so and there's no notes on why an assessor would apply that effective age.
no, not that is not that I can see
Oh,
from the information that I have currently.
okay. I'll ask you a tricky question. In your opinion, is this effective age accurate? You've probably not visited the property, so I'll just,
Yeah, I haven't inspected it, and I really wouldn't know. But
okay.
yeah,
And that effective age does affect the modeling of the property, is that right?
correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. That's my only questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Charlebois. If we can get to your brief here. 86 Young Street, just loading. Okay, where are you? Okay. All right, Mr. Charlebois, when you are ready, please.
Okay. So I've got a 3-story multifamily building built in 1916 with an effective age, according to the city of Winnipeg, of 1960. Site area is 5617 square feet, contains 12 units, 12 two-bedroom units. Page 6, there's an exterior photo on my, page 6 of my brief, there's an exterior photo of the subject property. Some of the physical details were already noted. I noted the stone foundation as well, dated windows, and sort of the disrepair there on the main door. Current assessment is 972 in the residential class. Set aside the sales comparison and the cost approach, focus in on the income. I believe it begins on 13 of my report. We're not going to dispute the city of Winnipeg's assessed income or vacancy allowance. The subject property's actual performance is far below market and not fit for analysis. The 24-ish or just shy of 24% adjustment that's been made to market rents is what we've gone with at the top line. So we've used 122,471. We're applying the top end of, I am applying the top end of what I believe to be the top end of what a typical expense ratio would be for a market apartment. And this just comes I will say anecdotally, through my experience in the field, once you get north of 70, 80, you're seeing things that are not year over year. This is an old building, stone foundation, wood frame on the inside. It's servicing a sector of the market that will typically be harder on the building. And my adjustment amount is 79,102. So I would just say that's on the high end of what I believe the market. The actuals, are substantial year over year. So I didn't go with those. My NOI used is 38,960. So going into my cap rate, you'll note, I'll just draw your attention specifically to page 14. So again, this property is stratified between that 46 to 69. And again, we've sort of talked about the subjectivity of an effective age from the assessment authority. But assuming there were updates that, warranted that, whether it ranged between 46 to 69, whether it's 1960, I mean, it's subjective. In this case, I've applied a 6 for the base cap rate. And then I've applied a 0.50 upward adjustment for the type of housing that it is. This is supported through, I guess, case law and sort of, I guess, just what I would claim to be sort of like a common sense approach to what this would require to bring it up to market from its current state. So again, I've gone with a 6.5 capitalization rate. 6 is the base with the 0.5 point adjustment. And before I conclude on that note, I would just have everyone join me on page 27 of my report. And I won't go through all this. There's lots of content in here in regards to this type of ownership and this type of business. But here you can see an excerpt from the appraisal journal that was included in an MMB case. The order number is up above on the top of that page. But if you'll look, I just want to note some of these things that they outlined. It outlined elevated risk factors included but not limited to lower quality of construction, advanced age, declining neighborhood, high expense ratios, and consequently a low net income or operating at a deficit. For all those reasons, I've take you back up to page 16 there with my reconciliation of value. I've gone with a value of 599,000 rounded downward. It's specifically this type of property that belongs almost at the non-investment grade of the capitalization rates. And thank you for your time today. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Mr. Omachinsky, any questions of the applicants?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kraus, any questions of the applicant?
Yes. One is just regarding the I guess the appendix information you just gave, where you were expressing that justification for higher cap rates is one of the things would be the degradation of the neighborhood. Do you know this neighborhood well?
Sorry, I don't know this well. I don't know the neighborhood super well, and I won't apply that specifically to the subject property. This is, a excerpt from the appraisal journal, sort of talking about the overarching impacts that can affect this. I wouldn't speak to like the current state of, I don't know if the term's appropriate, but gentrification or overturn of a neighborhood. I wouldn't have my thumb to the pulse enough to say that. I just wanted to highlight, broadly speaking, some of the valuation elements that have been identified in valuing this type of asset in the past.
Okay. And then the other thing I just have a question about is the stabilization for the expense.
Yeah.
And just I guess you've said like you've chosen 79,000 as I think you've mentioned that it was at the high end. But I'm just wondering how you, I'm looking at this 79. is that sort of, when you look at the past years, is that just like how does stabilization work? Is it just average in some capacity or of the past years or?
So no, if you look on page 16, where my reconciliation of value is, you'll see there's a 2020 to 2022 average. So if you look down at line item 31 and you follow it across, the 3-year average is 84,000, north of 84,000. And I took that down because I think it was getting north of 70%. And again, that comes specifically from, I guess I mentioned during my presentation, anecdotally and sort of just in my valuation experience of assets, multifamily assets near the end, or not near the end of their economic life, but that are performing poorly, let's say. Once you get north of that, you're almost losing the credibility of the income approach. So that's where I capped that at. So the actual 3-year average was higher there at 84,000, and I brought it down, and that is a subjective adjustment made by myself.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Ms. Linkletter, any questions of the applicant?
I don't have any questions to the applicant, but could I redirect to Mr. Omachinsky?
Of course.
Thank you. Mr. Omachinsky, I'm just wondering, does the model take into consideration that this is a Winnipeg housing?
I'm not
Property?
sure if it specifically will flag it if it's Winnipeg housing. I know that like sometimes the income level will be adjusted if it's a subsidized property. So we have the income level at below average. I've seen some at poor as well, but I'm not certain if it, yeah.
So then I'm just, and I apologize. This is just a hypothetical question on my part, but does the assessment department ever look at a property and sort of value it at the that it's at the end of its economic value?
I haven't seen that be done personally. I can't speak for the entire department. I also don't, yeah. So I'm actually unsure if it does or if they have before.
All right. I'm just wondering in regards to this property, as it's 109 years old and it's Winnipeg housing. So I was just wondering if, anyway, thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, from a valuation perspective, would you be interested to hear my perspective on the end of that economic life or no?
Sure.
Of an asset?
Sure.
Okay. So I would say this. I would say when you're using an income approach to value and an asset's approaching the end of its economic life, there's a 2-part equation, right? So it's at what point does the income value become ridiculous enough to the point where the land value would supersede that? And that is bracketed by a number of concerns because it's not a straight equation, because you can't just say, okay, well, tomorrow it's vacant land. There's a cost that comes with remediating an asset to the point where it's development land. So in my valuation experience, that's quite a ridiculous point for the income approach, because to cost in the factor of demolition and removal and remediation of a site like this to the point where it's at investment grade, those two, the intersection between those 2 points is a rare sort of meeting, I would say. And that would be my opinion on that. I don't know if that helps or draws more questions, but that's my 2 cents on it. So.
All right. I thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Charlebois, when you look at this assessment and you look at the effective age, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this building at all. Are you?
No, I've driven by it, but I'm not very familiar with it.
Do you, when you do an estimate of value, on this building, would you say that probably, or I'm not trying not to put words in your mouth, that the effective age might be wrong and you adjust your assessment accordingly?
it would be difficult to say that in terms, because it is a subject. This is a subjective sort of opinion that someone else in valuation has applied to this. What I may say is that assets built in 1916 will have obviously been updated, or they will not. they would not be standing. And now within that, what are the levels of structural improvement and the levels of aesthetic improvement that allow people to achieve rents on buildings? Difficult. So for me, in my I'll just speak to my application of it. I would say, you know what, maybe not far off on the 1960, but when I stratified it through mine from a market perspective, I had it at a 6. I had the rest of these that were on here today that were 1955 at a 5.75. I would elevate this, and I think I was being conservative in that application. And sorry, that's not a perfect answer for you, but without a fulsome review of utilities and structural, it would be tough to say. But for me, I obviously don't think it's 1916, and that would be, I don't think it would be standing, but anyway, or maybe not standing, but I don't think it'd be operating. Anyway, that'll be, yeah.
I'm just asking your opinion. I understand without having visited the property, but I was just curious. That's all.
Yeah. So whether it's, and for my cap study, it was easier because we stratify from, was it 46 to 69? So I don't think that was wrong in terms of where I selected from. I feel like that was appropriate. So that's where I looked at just for conversation purposes.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's all my questions. Mr. Omachinsky, any requirement for summary?
Yeah, I just point to the market value per suite, even with the 5.25% capitalization rate only being at 81,000. Although I haven't seen the interior of the building, I imagine that value is reasonable, and that would just be the extent.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Charlebois?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Broadly speaking, across this docket, I think we've seen buildings that are ranging from 23 to 60, and I think they're at the low end of the cap rate range. And I think when reviewing these, I think they should be up higher. And with respect to this last property we just did, given that I feel that the range of cap rate applied by the city is too aggressive. In addition to that, I think this property requires specific adjustment. And I think Madam Chair pointed out, sometimes the picture can say 1,000 words. And I would just ask that the board consider those factors when they make their decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you to both parties for appearing. We have heard all the items scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned.
Great.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you both. Very interesting.
All right, Mr. Chair, I will go take us offline.
Thank you, Mrs. Harland.
And may we have a 7 to 10 minute break?
You certainly can.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. I'll come back and let you know that we're offline.
Okay.